All right, let's walk through some of the kite problems from your assignment for Monday. The first set of problems you have to do is 16 through 24. And the first property you always want to use is the fact that the diagonals are perpendicular. So since the diagonals here are perpendicular, the four angles in the middle are 90, 90, 90, and 90. So the measure of angle 1 is going to be 90 degrees. Okay. We also know that one pair of angles is getting bisected. And right, that's the one that's going to be the angles between the two sides that are congruent. So this angle here gets bisected and this one over here. So if this is 22 here, the one here is also 22. Right? This angle here gets bisected by the diagonal. So it's 22 and 22. Splits it in half. So if that half's 22, this half's also 22. And then we have 90 here. So we have the two of the three angles in the triangle. So we know the three angles of any triangle add up to 180. So we can do 180 minus 90 minus 22. That should give us 67. So the measure of angle 2 here is going to be 67 degrees. 22 degrees and 67 degrees. 17 is pretty much the same. Diagonals it's a kite. Right? You have one pair of congruent sides. There's a second pair of congruent sides. So it's a kite. So the diagonals are perpendicular. So you have 90, 90, 90 in the middle. And then again, here are your one pair of congruent sides. Here's the other. So these angles, this angle here gets bisected, and then this one up here gets bisected. So again, this is going to be 45. Right? That half's 45. That one's also 45. And then you have the three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So you would do 180 minus 90 minus 45, which is also going to give you 45. So this one will also be 45. Okay. 18 is we're using the fact that there's one pair of opposite angles that are congruent. So the pair of angles, the angles that are between the two pairs of consecutive sides that are congruent. So here's one pair of consecutive sides that's congruent. Here's a second pair of consecutive sides congruent. Right. So between those two sides, those two pair of sides, those are the angles that are going to be congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So we can do 360, right? The four angles of a quadrilateral add up to 360. So we can do 360 minus 90 minus 54. Okay. It's going to be 216, right? That's, 216. Okay, so we know that these two angles have to add up to 216. We also know they're congruent, so we can simply divide them by 2 and get 108 for each of them. So this one's going to be 108. This one's going to be 108. Okay, the other way to do this is to make them x. You could have made each of those x, and you would have had 90 plus 45, plus 54 plus x equals 360, because the four angles, 1, 2, 3, 4, all add up to 360. And so then you would solve that and you would end up with x equals 108. Okay, so 108 and 108. Okay, 19, 20, and 21 are just like 16 and 17. Okay, you got to put 90, 90, 90 in the middle because diagonals are perpendicular. You got one pair of angles that's being bisected, one pair of opposite angles being bisected. And then you have to use the fact that three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Right, and then same thing for 22, 23. And then 24, you're going to use 18 as an example. 24 is like number 18. Right, you're going to have one pair of congruent angles. In this case, that's going to be 1 and 2. And you know the four angles of the kite, or any quadrilateral, a kite is a quadrilateral. So the four angles of a kite are going to add up to 360. And then you can solve just like we did in 18. Okay, The second set of problems we have is 34 through 36. We need to find the values of x and y if they have a y. So let's start first with 34. So we know that it's a kite because here's one pair of consecutive sides that are congruent. Here's a second pair of consecutive sides that are congruent. So we know it's a kite, and they tell us. So we know diagonals are perpendicular. So the middle angles here are 90, 90, and 90, and 90. Okay, and then we can set up an equation. We have an expression for this angle here, x plus 6, an expression for this angle here, 2x, and then we have 90 degrees in the middle. So we have enough information to solve for x here. We can add up the three angles of this triangle and set them equal to 180, and then we can solve for x. Right? 35 is a little bit more complicated. Let's see if we can zoom in a little and move over so we have a little more room. Okay. First thing we know is one pair of opposite angles is congruent, and it's going to be the pair of angles that's between the two sets of consecutive sides. So here's one pair of sides that are congruent, and then here's your second pair. So the angles between those two are congruent. So we know that 3x plus 5 is going to equal 4x minus 30. Okay. And then we can solve for x. If we add 30 to both sides, and we subtract 3x, right, we're going to end up with 35 equals x. Okay. We can then plug that in. We know that 3 times 35 plus 5 here, right, that's going to give us 3 times 35. So that's going to be 105 plus 5 is 110. Right? 105 plus 5 gives us 110. So we know that this angle here, the 3x plus 5, is 110. Another property of kites is that the other pair of angles, opposite angles, is going to be bisected. So this pair of opposite angles was congruent. This pair gets bisected. So if the bottom half is 2y minus 20, the part up here is also 2y minus 20. And then we know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So we can add those all up. So y plus 2y minus 20 plus 110, those three angles should add up to 180. So then you have 3y, combined like terms, that's going to be plus 90 equals 180. Subtract 90 from both sides, you're going to get 3y equals 90. Divide by 3, y is going to be equal to 30. Right, and we can always plug that back in just to make sure. So if we have 30 over here, 2 times 30 is 60, minus 20 is 40. 40 plus 30 plus 110 is going to be 180. So we're good there. Okay, 36. You have to use the fact that diagonals bisect opposite angles. So these two angles here are the ones getting bisected. So if this is the big one is a 90-degree angle, we're bisecting it. So this piece here will be 45, and this one here will be 45. And then you know the three angles of a triangle will add up to 180 degrees. So 45 plus 3x over 2 plus 6x is going to equal 180. Okay. You can then use that equation to solve for x. When you find x, you can plug it back in here. And then these pair of angles should end up being congruent. So whatever you get for the measure of this angle, that's what's going to equal y on the other side. All right, so we're bisecting that 90-degree angle. So it's 45 and 45. We can then solve x because the three angles of a triangle should add up to 180. Then once you find x, um, um, you can substitute it in 6 times whatever the value of x is, and that's going to equal y because opposite angles are congruent. Just if you need an additional hint too, since you have a fraction, maybe your best first step once you write your equation out is to multiply everything by 2. That way you get rid of the fraction. The other way to do it is you could write this as 1.5x. But you should be able to find x there first, and then you can get y. All right, and we'll do a Google Meet Monday at 7:30. Or we could do it a different time too if you guys want help there. And again, email me any questions if you want to check answers or something like that, or screenshot a problem you're working on if you really need help, or send me a text and a reminder. All those are great ways for me to help you.